The phone rang again. And again. And again. I let it vibrate on the marble table beside my coffee. 71 missed calls. The screen glowed like a desperate heartbeat, all from the same number. My daughter-in-law. I watched the Swiss lake outside my villa window instead of answering. The water was calm. Perfectly still. Unlike the storm inside that woman's head. Yesterday, she had called me with a voice full of vinegar and entitlement. If you want to join Thanksgiving, come wash the dishes. She didn't even try to hide the contempt. Her laugh afterward had been small, sharp. The laugh of someone who believes they are finally above you. I remember leaning back in my chair, thinking, calculating. Then I answered calmly, enjoy. Just one word. No anger, no explanation, no invitation. After that, I posted 3 photos. The first, my new villa overlooking Lake Geneva. The second, the marble terrace with a glass of Bordeaux on the table. The third, the view from my bedroom window. Snowy mountains, silver water. Silence. Within an hour, the calls began. 71 of them. Funny how respect suddenly appears. When people realize the man they mocked isn't poor. But the calls weren't really about Switzerland. No, they were about something else entirely. Something darker. Something I had been planning for weeks. Because back home, in my house, my wife's cousin was sleeping in the guest room. And tomorrow morning, the FBI would be waiting for him at the bank. His name was Victor. My wife introduced him 3 months ago. A distant cousin, she said lightly. He's having some financial trouble. Just until he gets back on his feet. Victor arrived with 2 suitcases and a smile that tried too hard. I noticed things immediately. The way my wife avoided eye contact when she explained his stay. The way Victor studied the house like an appraiser. The way their conversation stopped when I entered a room. But suspicion is a quiet thing. It doesn't shout. It whispers. I told myself I was imagining it. Until one night, I woke up thirsty around 2 a.m. The house was dark, silent. But when I walked past the guest room, the door was open, empty. A faint light came from the living room. I stepped closer and stopped. Victor's hand rested on my wife's waist. Too familiar, too practiced. She didn't pull away. She leaned into him. Their whispers slid through the dark like knives. Once the documents are signed, the accounts will be under your name. He won't even understand what happened. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Everything inside me went cold. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning something. And I was the target. I went back to bed without making a sound. Lay beside my wife, listened to her breathing. Thought about the 27 years we'd spent together. Then I realized something. They weren't just betraying me. They thought I was stupid. That was the real insult. The next morning I smiled. Poured coffee. Asked Victor about his job search. He lied smoothly. I admired the performance. Actors always deserve applause. Over the next weeks, I watched, observed, collected details. Victor spent long hours on his laptop. Financial forms, bank templates, transfer authorizations. One evening, he forgot to close the screen. A document glowed under the desk lamp. My signature, perfectly copied. Underneath it, authorization to transfer several $1,000,000 to an offshore account. Impressive work, but sloppy. He underestimated something. My background. Before retirement, I spent 30 years working in forensic accounting. Fraud leaves fingerprints, always. I began documenting everything. Photos, copied files, phone records, late-night messages between him and my wife. One line stood out. Once the transfer clears, we disappear. Disappear. Romantic, but unrealistic. Because while Victor believed he was forging documents, I was creating a different file, one that would interest federal investigators very much. Bank fraud, identity theft, wire transfer conspiracy, 3 crimes. All documented, all signed, already. The trap was almost perfect. All I needed was for them to try using the forged documents. Fortunately, Victor already had an appointment at the bank. Tomorrow morning. The night before the bank visit, I finally spoke to my wife. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, probably texting Victor upstairs. I placed a folder in front of her. She frowned. What's this? Evidence. Her hand froze. Inside the folder were printed screenshots, messages, documents, photos of them together in the living room that night. Her face drained of color. Where did you... I've known for weeks. Silence. Then panic. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Her voice cracked. We were going to tell you. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked a simple question. Did you love him before or after you started stealing from me? She looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. I stood. No need to answer. And walked away. The next morning, Victor left early. Suit pressed, confidence glowing. My wife watched from the window, her hands trembling. You can still stop this, she whispered. I shook my head. No. She turned. You'll ruin him. I met her eyes calmly. He ruined himself. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. A news alert. Local bank fraud investigation. 2 suspects detained. I imagined the moment. Victor sliding the forged documents across the desk. The bank officer excusing herself. The quiet arrival of federal agents. The confusion on his face when handcuffs appeared. Later that afternoon, my wife received the call. She collapsed into a chair. They arrested him? Her voice sounded hollow. I poured a glass of wine. Of course they did. She stared at me. You set this up? Yes. A long pause filled the room. Then she whispered the only question that mattered. Why didn't you just divorce me? I took a slow sip. Because betrayal deserves witnesses. Now everyone knows who you really are. 2 weeks later, the house was empty. Victor sat in federal custody. My wife moved out to stay with her son, the same son whose wife had once ordered me to wash dishes for Thanksgiving. Funny how families work. I sold the house quietly, transferred my assets, bought the villa in Switzerland. Peace is expensive, but worth every dollar. The 71st missed call finally stopped. My phone sat silent on the table. Outside, the lake shimmered under the winter sun. I looked at the mountains. Thought about trust, about greed, about the strange way betrayal clarifies everything. Some people think revenge requires rage. They're wrong. The best revenge is patience. Because when the trap finally closes, you don't need to push. They fall into it themselves. And all you have to do is watch.